Is Berlowitz blazing a path to a QB role behind Diego Pavia? We'll see.
You are Locked On Vandy, your daily podcast on the Vanderbilt Commodores, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked On Vandy podcast on the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Corey Burton. Today, we break down what's happening so far in spring practice. Clark Lea is not happy with all the penalties and some of the sloppy play, but that's just coach speak. But there is plenty of good things happening with this team, man. Blaise Berlowitz, for one, seems to be separating himself as the backup quarterback behind Diego Pavia. He had a nice scrimmage and really has kind of shown out throughout the practices as well. Martel Hight is proving to be an extremely valuable piece. And guess what? The offensive line is gelling and they're starting to move people. So I know a lot of people were worried about that. So I thought I'd ease your fears a little bit. And also, we're going to wrap up the show by discussing the implications of Jason Edwards hitting the portal. What does that mean for this basketball team? That's huge news. So thanks for making Locked On Vandy your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube as a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So this is spring practice is rolling along. It's blazing along. Pun sort of intended, right? And it's going well. And if you ask Coach Lea, it's not going well because he's not. I guarantee you this. As a coach, I can pretty much guarantee that that's on the forefront of his mind, and it is he's not happy about that, right? So the pre-snap penalties, defense not getting stops soon enough, like the offense kind of finishing a little bit further ahead of the defense than Coach Lea would like. So as a coach, those things are going to be sticking in his mind. But when you kind of really look at it, it's good to have the offense doing well finally, because we've read so much about the defense really kind of showing out and the offense just kind of puttering along, showing flashes here and there. And it's been good. But the concerning part is for an offense that is going to be predicated on pre-snap motions and moving guys around, getting these pre-snap procedure penalties is probably not a great thing, but it's also part of the process of learning how and when and communicating the timing of all these shifts and things like that. When you vary the snap counts and you're barking things out, people are going to jump, and it's just this is the time, this is the place to get all those mistakes out. Not in week one against Charleston Southern, definitely not any other week after that. So it's probably a good thing that they're getting all that stuff out of the way. The other concerns, very briefly, are the running back injuries are not great. It's really kind of putting a dent in the depth of that position. You've got Johan Cardenas banged up, nicked up, and I don't know if he's being held out for precautionary reasons, but I think if we had a game, he would probably be up and ready to go. And MK Young getting a concussion, that's I think it was on the first play, and that's not good. So again, just kind of some concerning pieces there, but I'm not going to spend any time on that. What I really want to talk about is Blaise Berlowitz, man. He's separating himself. And here's what Clark Lea had to say. He said a bunch of things, but this is the quote that stood out. I thought, again, he capitalized on shot opportunities, which is something Vanderbilt's offense, this is not part of the quote. I'll read the quote and I'll break it down. He said, quote, I thought, again, he capitalized on shot opportunities. We'll need to evaluate the film. The biggest thing with Blaise is he got some athletic tools, he's got some physical tools, and he's got arm strength. Just making good decisions with the ball, but what we can't do is turn the ball over, and I thought that was cleaner today. So breaking down that quote, the first part of it, he capitalized on shot opportunities. One of those shots was to the aforementioned Martel Hight, who is going to be an absolute weapon on offense, and he may log a little more time over there than he expected, or hopefully hopefully wanted. So, those shot opportunities, if we can get the passing game to where we can capitalize on those shot opportunities, that's going to be really, really good. And he's got, Berlowitz is, coming in, the kind of scouting report on him and where I thought he was going to be one of the odd men out is because the way this offense is designed is not necessarily tailored towards what Blaise Berlowitz can do. It's really kind of tailored towards what Jeremy St. Hilaire can do, obviously Diego Pavia, but Whit Muschamp is not really that. Jack Elliott is coming in, and he's kind of tailor-made for this offense. And Drew Dickey is good enough. Also, he's been around long enough that I thought he was going to be in the driver's seat for the backup role. But Blaise Berlowitz, he's not a runner per se, but he can escape. He has wheels. He can run. He can get himself out of trouble. He can pick up great yards, but he's not a run guy. You're not going to throw a bunch of quarterback design runs with Blaise Berlowitz in the game. However, he's probably got the strongest arm of that entire group. He showed that off in the scrimmage. He showed that off at various points this spring, and whether or not the receiver on the other end caught it, I'm not real sure why. But he has delivered some really nice throws this spring period. So, and especially in the scrimmage. So he's showing now that he has good command of the offense, which I thought that was going to be his primary strength, was the fact that outside of Diego Pavia, he knows this offense better than any other quarterback on this roster. He knows the ins and outs better than all the other quarterbacks on the roster, except for maybe Diego Pavia. And he possesses the tools to be able to, if Diego Pavia goes down, he can operate this offense. It'll be slightly different, but only slightly different. And he's somebody that I think there's not going to be, I don't foresee there being any major drop-offs if he were to come into the game. So that's got to make you feel good a little bit. And for Diego Pavia, that's got to make you feel good. Like, hey, I can be aggressive. I can play, because I think, there's probably times, if I had to guess, there's probably times where the coaching staff and or Diego Pavia probably at certain points in the game would probably dial it down a couple notches for preservation. We're not, it's okay. It's a thing. Like if you're a quarterback and you're running a lot, you do have to kind of preserve, especially if you're not used to all that punishment. And I'm sure at some points Diego Pavia did actually conserve, especially when he was in that stretch of games where he was really banged up and honestly probably shouldn't have got as many snaps as he did. But that guy has tremendous guts, man. Like to do what he did through, being as beat up as he was, because there was a major difference between him in the last 3 games and the bowl game. He was finally healthy in the bowl game, and he was an absolute dominant force, the dominant force that he was in the early part of the season. And then you saw him kind of decline, but that was him getting beat up, and that was him being banged up. And I think a lot of that was he was playing through a lot of that stuff because you really didn't have another option. Berlowitz wasn't quite ready yet. Dickey wasn't there. Nate Johnson, they liked his athletic ability, but they didn't trust him as a quarterback. And of course, St. Hilaire and Muschamp, they're not, they're freshmen and they were nowhere close. So it's a situation to where now they feel better about that. I bet the play calling changes a little bit. I bet it gets a little more aggressive. I bet you see a lot more quarterback runs. I think they dialed away from that later in the season as Pavia got beat up. I think they dial a lot more of those up, not only early in the season because, hey, you got to establish it, but I think as the season goes, they're not going to be scared, and Diego Pavia is going to be even less scared if that's even possible. He's going to be even more aggressive. He's going to be scared's not the right word because he was never scared. I'm not, I don't want to say he was scared because that's not true. Probably, the self-preservation mode's probably going to be this comes dialed back a little bit because he's going to be like, hey, we got Berlowitz over here, man. I've got no reason to not throw everything I got at it and see what happens. And so the future is bright, man. At the quarterback position, Jack Elliott's coming in, who's supposed to be a carbon copy of Diego Pavia. Not only with the leadership qualities, he's supposed to be a slightly better version physically with the quarterback tools than Diego Pavia, which is kind of scary. If you have the same leadership qualities and you're better, physically and with some of the things that you do as a quarterback. Obviously, he's not polished like Diego Pavia is. That's kind of a huge difference. But I think when you're done with his career, you're going to be like, dude, we love Diego Pavia. We love Jack Elliott. They are the same player. And there's nothing wrong with having a slightly better version of yourself coming back through the pipeline. That's what you want. And I'm sure Diego would say the same thing. He would say, man, if this guy is better than me, that means I left this program in a great place. And here we are. So I'm excited about the future of the quarterback position. I think it's in good hands if Berlowitz has to step in for whatever reason, definitely injury. If Berlowitz had to step in, I think this offense would be just fine because they were humming along today. They were clicking pretty good. Shot plays were hitting. I think the offensive line is extremely motivated and they're doing well. I think they made a good hire with Nady to pair with Coach K. I think that's going to be a good coaching duo. I don't know what they're going to do as far as splitting the responsibilities or how they're going to coach the offensive line, but whatever it is, it's working. I can tell you that it's working, whatever they've decided to do. So they just need to keep that up. And I'll talk more about the offensive line here in just a minute. But Martel Hight, man, he was the recipient of one of these shot plays that Berlowitz capitalized on when he said he capitalized on shot opportunities. Martel Hight was one of those on the other end. He's going to be a weapon, man. I had a whole show about him. He's going to be a weapon. We got to keep talking about him because he just keeps on going, man. He just keeps on going. So that's something we'll talk about next. But first, it's all about FanDuel. Yeah, March Madness is here. Well, it's almost come and gone, really. It's Final Four time now, but FanDuel is giving you the chance to get in on the action like never before. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 extra bucks to use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories and even who's cutting down the nets. I don't think there's any Cinderella stories though. I think it's all one seeds in the Final Four. So the Cinderella story went right out the window. But nonetheless, you can pick your favorites. I don't know out of all the one seeds that are left who would be the underdogs. I guess I got my eye on the SEC. Let's just say that Florida and Auburn. FanDuel makes it easy to back with the spreads, totals, and game props. And with tournament games happening almost every day, there's always something exciting to bet on. The FanDuel app is simple to use, and when I win, I get paid instantly. No waiting around. So visit FanDuel.com and get in on the college hoops action all tournament long. And you don't want to delay. You better get in now. All right, thanks for making Locked On Vandy your first listen each and every day. I appreciate you guys, man. I appreciate you, the everydayers. I appreciate you guys that are racking up the views and really kind of checking it out and commenting and things like that. I hope you guys stick around and I hope you guys bring a friend with you. So if you got any feedback, just feel free to let me know. If you want a second listen, Chris Gordy, Locked On SEC is a really good show. Locked On Ole Miss is another good show. With Stephen Willis. He's doing a tremendous job. He's the most watched Ole Miss podcast for a reason, so you should go check that out. Anyway, so Blaise Berlowitz. We were talking about Blaise Berlowitz, and he was incredible. That is 100% right. He was incredible. He was, he's a guy that, again, can just create some things. And he can create some things in the passing game, which is desperately what Vanderbilt needs. And he's a guy, and I'm sure Diego Pavia is a guy. Diego Pavia didn't participate in this scrimmage. I think it's a lot to do with evaluating the other quarterbacks on the roster. But he is he's somebody like if he can take care of the ball, he'll be in really, really good shape. So but speaking of controlling drives, creating plays, and doing some things. This guy, I don't know if you've heard of him. I don't know if you've heard me talking about him, but it's Martel Hight. That's right, Martel Hight. He's been absolutely outstanding. They've kind of dabbled a little bit in the Travis Hunter experience with him, and with the last 2, maybe 3 practices, you're starting to see that more. And there's a reason for that, right? There's a reason for that. He had an explosive play, and I don't, honestly, I would love for them to do that, but I think, I predict that they're going to use him sparingly at first because he's such a good corner. They don't want to like wear him out. But truthfully, if that guy's explosive, man, it's not going to matter. You throw him in for like 2 plays and he catches an explosive. And takes it to the house on the second play that he's in. Like if he can be that efficient with scoring and elevating the offense, he might have a permanent role. They might just say, dude, you got to do some conditioning, man. You're going to be Travis Hunter. You're going to be up and down the field. You're going to be playing corner. They're going to be developing some corner depth behind him because he's such a weapon on offense and such a weapon on special teams, man. That's going to be outstanding. But I mean, he was absolutely brilliant, man. He had an explosive play down the sideline. Again, he probably didn't play a ton on offense because they're trying to get some other guys in, but I think it's, man, it's going to be a lot of fun if they can do that because you see 25 come in and you're like, oh, here we go. And opposing coaches have to prepare for that now. And and it could be like, Travis Hunter played the whole game pretty much on, everywhere. So I don't think he came off the field very much. I don't think it's going to be quite that, snap share, but I think you're going to see a situation to where, Martel Hight is just there in the game for a long period of time. So I really like the option of having that explosive Swiss Army knife type of guy. He can do jet sweeps. He can do, he's another guy, alongside Junior Sherrill, who is obviously the lone receiver right now. McVay is banged up. He hasn't been able to make much of an impact. And the other guys just haven't really done anything. They just haven't really hit, so to speak. So you're looking, your starting receivers are probably not on campus yet. I think Chance, Fitzgerald could be an outside shot at starting. McVay, he just hasn't participated. He's obviously going to be a guy. They're working him back in the lineup. Trent Hudson is obviously going to be one of the starters. I think it's just the other guys haven't shown anything yet, and it's still early, but they haven't shown anything yet. So you can only assume that, okay, well, Trent Hudson has a really good opportunity to come in and be the receiver. But you look at what Martel Hight's doing, that could be a huge factor. So stay tuned to that throughout the course of the spring. And to continue this offensive onslaught on the show today, the offense is really kind of showing out a little bit, which you're excited to hear about that, and you never really hear too much about it. Like you kind of have to generate things about the offense succeeding because the defense is usually way ahead, and that's just the nature of practicing against yourself. But the offense is starting to kind of make some pushes. And here's what Clark Lea said about the offensive line and their performance. And I really love this quote. And there's probably more to it, but there's more to it where he's kind of critical of the defensive line and their technique and things. But as an offensive lineman, if you're winning your battle, you're winning your battle. It doesn't matter what they're doing; that's on them. But he said, "I believe they've elevated their performance even through spring." He said they're moving people at the point of attack. That's the best part of that quote. They're moving people at the point of attack, which means a few things. It means their strength is up. Their technique is sound. They're understanding the concepts. They're not learning the concepts. I think last year it was a lot of learning, and there wasn't a ton of like you couldn't really get much more than just learning the basics. Like this is the first time any of these guys have ever heard of switching sides, and that seemed ridiculous coming in. But now that they're getting it, it's not even anywhere close to being as ridiculous as it was talking about it this time last spring, because at this point last spring, it was considered such an antiquated practice that people just weren't like, what? They're going to switch sides? Like, what are we nuts? That's how people were looking at it. And, turns out it might be the best thing to happen. But, it took a year to kind of learn, and you got some lumps in there, and had a lot of brilliant moments. And you had some learning experiences as well. And you built some depth, and you got some guys in the portal. And now you got some dudes that can play. They can move some bodies. They can get after some folks. They can be a force in the run game now. And you got a few running backs when they're healthy. And I talked about at the top of the show how concerning that is that they're not. But you've got some running backs, and you've got a quarterback that can also be a legitimate threat. We know he can be a legitimate threat running the ball. Like that's an amazing feel as an offensive lineman. When you know that stuff has happened, when you know that, hey, he's gonna plow through the line. He's gonna run physical. He's gonna run hard. He may not be a home run hitter, but he's gonna get those tough yards when it's 3rd and 2, and we need it and we got to have it. He's gonna be there. When same scenario, 3rd and 4, balls in midfield. We gotta have this to keep the ball away from Arch Manning. We got to have it. Diego Pavia is going to go get it. MK Young is going to go get it. And MK Young has the speed to create that home run that said he can't do, that AJ Newberry maybe not can do, especially coming off of injury. Probably won't be able to do coming off of injury as well as he was before. But this is a group that this offensive line can believe in. And I think they believed in Seti. They definitely believed in Diego Pavia, but there wasn't much outside of that this offensive line really believed in. Not saying they didn't block hard, but it's just sometimes as a blocker, your efforts just go by the wayside because there's just not much happening behind you. And, that can kind of make people believe that you're worse than you actually are. There's things in pass pro that make you look worse than you actually are. One little miscommunication and the offensive line looks like an absolute mess. So all you hear is the offensive line can't pass protect, and then you get morons like me going, oh, I think the offensive line coach is going to retire now, and stuff like that, So, I heard a rumor, ran with it, and probably shouldn't have. But nonetheless, this offensive line group is tremendous, and they're going to be they're only going to get better. They're only going to get better, and that's encouraging to see that, and that's encouraging to hear Coach Lea say they are moving people at the point of attack, right? And I know from a coaching perspective, I know the response is, yeah, that's their job. Well, of course it's their job. But when you struggle, sometimes that's an encouraging thing, right? And you read about the offensive line struggling a little bit. And some of that is just them getting used to playing. Some of that's just like, hey, we haven't done full contact in quite some time. So anyway, that's neither here nor there. This is a promising report. This offensive line is going to be great. Jordan White is going to be incredible at center. It's going to start with him, and it's going to work its way out. And so I can't wait to read more reports like that. The offensive line is moving people. Now I want to see that they're burying people. That's the next thing I want to read. They're burying people. This defensive line is complaining that they're getting pancaked, right? It's Pancake Pantry out there, West End. That's going to be the new NIL sponsor. So I'm really excited about that. So, but we're going to switch gears to basketball. Very important, very, very groundbreaking, earth-shattering, whatever you want to call it. Jason Edwards hits the portal. I thought he was the MVP of the team. He hits the portal. We'll talk about it next.
The NCAA tournament is here, and so is the bracket breakdown.
Locked On Podcast Network and Amazon Fire TV channels are teaming up to deliver NCAA tournament coverage like never before. Watch studio shows featuring former players and Locked On's local experts as they guide you through every upset, buzzer beater, and bracket matchup.
Stream it all for free on Amazon Fire TV channel. Search Bracket Breakdown to see it all for free.
It's your team every day.
All right, wrapping up the show here, Locked On Vandy. Thanks for making us your first listen each and every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast, and also right here on YouTube. At Locked On Vandy on social media. Follow us, like, subscribe, all that good stuff. So, Jason Edwards hits the portal, which a lot of us not surprised that he did, but I don't know if a lot of people share my opinion. I I don't like it. I don't think it's a good idea, honestly. And there's all kind of numbers being thrown around. I don't know what's true, what's not, what to believe, what not to believe. The number I keep hearing the most is 1.5 million. I don't know that a 6-foot guard who's inconsistent shooter has pretty good defense, improving defense. His main asset is that he can get to the bucket. He's fast. He'll lose you in a phone booth. He can get to the rim, but he's an inconsistent shooter because I think he's just so quick sometimes, and his technique breaks down on him. I think it's the only reason he's inconsistent as a shooter. But to me, this is my take. Jason Edwards will not find a place that will allow him to play the style that he was accustomed to under Coach Byington. I really don't think. I think with Coach Byington and the system that he had, the style of play, the coaching philosophy, everything that Jason Edwards did well, I think was because he was a great fit within this scheme. Now, I think Vanderbilt, if he were to stay, or if Vanderbilt gets a player similar to him from the portal now that Jason Edwards is in the portal, and this also could be he's testing out the market because Vanderbilt wouldn't, or the NIL, contracts or numbers weren't matching up. He could be testing the market and go. I mean, that's kind of one of the byproducts, unfortunately, of getting in the NIL market and getting in the free transfer windows is that you're going to have guys that are going to test their market value. And it's a risk because he's assuming that, he's hoping that if he doesn't get he's hoping that if Vanderbilt is indeed his best offer, that he'll still have a spot. But that's not guaranteed because you got to move on, right? You got to, Vanderbilt's got to take care of Vanderbilt. They can't wait around on Jason Edwards. So if he comes back, great. I think he's a hell of a player. I think he, going into next season, he needs to improve on his defense and he needs to become more of a consistent shooter if he wants to increase his scoring capability. But to me, I think the best place to do that is right here in Nashville. And, I'm locked on Vandy, so of course I'm probably going to be a little bit biased towards that. But I don't know where his market lies. I don't know what's out there for him. I don't know what schools, what schools he could go to that would be an improvement over Vanderbilt program wise that would utilize his skill set as a starter and as an impact player. I don't think other schools are going to get him and say, we're going to build around you, Jason Edwards. I don't think that's going to happen. And to me, again, here's my take. I don't think you'll find a place that will allow him to play the style that he was accustomed to under Coach Byington. You put him in and you're like, just go score. And if you get swarmed, kick it out to Tyler Nickel and let him knock down a three. That was kind of like what he did. He just go score, go create. He let him be creative. He did not stifle that, not one bit. And Jason Edwards, I'm sure, would tell you the same thing. I loved watching him play. He was a lot of fun. And, if he does move on and he does go to a different place, then, go be great. I rooted for Tyron Lawrence. And now rooted for Lawrence at Georgia. I think he did well. I think his situation, I don't think it improved, but I don't think he had a downgrade either. I think he had a good experience at Georgia. I'm never going to hate on a guy that wants to try to improve his future. I can't hate on that. I just don't think that his best interest is to go somewhere else. I just think his best situation is indeed here. I think if he's looking at what can improve him the most, and I know he has aspirations of playing in the NBA. Every college basketball player at this level probably does. And to me, I think this place will allow him to grow as a basketball player because it allows him to play his style of basketball while also improving the other areas. I think somewhere else he's going to have to go and completely re-identify himself, and that's going to take time. That's going to be frustrating, and that's going to be, something that I have a hard time. It's kind of like a one and done scenario with quarterbacks or with any players in the transfer portal at major skill positions that require timing, like wide receivers. It's hard for quarterbacks and wide receivers in football to catch on in the portal because you have to go and reinvent yourself, essentially, because you're fitting into a different scheme. You're fitting into a different style of play. Offensive line, somewhat, but pass pro. Inside zone, duo, outside zone is this, very similar. You just got to learn some new vocabulary words, and you can, offensive linemen are a little bit easier to plug and play. If you can play, you can play. If you can't, you can't, right? And that right away. So it's not as difficult in that regard because style, offensive line, it's you can either block or you can't, really, simply put. So with guys like Jason Edwards, he's so unique that it's just going to be hard for him to assimilate into a new style of play. And by the time he does that, season will be over. I think he spent a lot of this year trying to do that and trying to really find who he was. And when he finally did, which that seems like what I said seemed like it took a long time. It didn't really. He found himself about halfway through the non-conference schedule. He found himself pretty quickly. And he was really, really good. He lost himself occasionally here and there, where I think he thought he was a better three-point shooter than he actually is, which is not a knock. It just is what it is. That's just not his game. That's just not his style. And when he understood that, he was brilliant. And so I just think if he were to come back, I think him going in the portal is just not a great move on his part. Now, if he gets more money and he improves his financial situation, great. Like if he gets what he's after, and he has a successful experience, great. I'm rooting for that. I really am. But I think he should come back. He's one of those players that should come back. I think his potential and things like that. If he would have come back, he could have had something really special here. But that's neither here nor there. If Vanderbilt at the time still has a spot for him, great. I'd welcome him back. No problems whatsoever. So, but baseball. We'll get into more of that on the next episode because as great as they were against A&M, we'll have to break that down on the next episode. And of course, there's more than meets the eye with the scrimmages and the spring football stuff. So we'll talk more storylines there and some other things that I see that are encouraging. We'll talk about that on a later episode. But until then, have a great rest of your day. And we'll see you back here next time on the Locked On Vandy podcast on the Locked On Podcast Network. Anchor down. Peace.